Welcome to jetNEXUS tutorials for fast, scalable and resilient applications. In this video I'm going to show you what's new in software version 4.2.0, where we've created over 30 new features, a huge number of improvements plus many more customer fixes. So let's begin. If you haven't already got a copy of the software, you can download a copy from the free trial section of our website, as you can see in the screen. Fill out the details, submit a query, you'll be sent an email with the download links. Once you've built it, then you can just put in the IP address of the load balancer, and mine is 192. You can see it there already. So notice I'm just putting in the IP address, which normally would go to HTTP from your browser, and the jetNEXUS will then redirect you to the HTTPS site and therefore the logon screen. Notice you can see the name of the LBX. It'll be probably pretty generic at this stage, so we'll go in and change that first off. Admin jetNEXUS is our standard username and password, and then you'll be presented with the typical IP services screen. What we've done in this version is change quite a lot of the navigational side to make a bit more sense and tidy it all up. So let's go straight into changing our name first. So you can see the name of our box is LBX. This is now in the system section, and it's in the network, and we can see LBX name there. So we'll change this one to what's new in 4.2.0, and we click update. We'll notice it's already changed in the tab up at the top. So notice here we can change, or we can delete this tab that's open. So it's open here, but the more tabs you open, they'll open up on the top bar as well to save you find them in the navigational section. You can get rid of that or get rid of any that you open with the cross there, but you can't get rid of the IP services, and that's because it's the main page really, and you can always find it. That's where you typically be going back to. So what do we have? In services, we have new for this version is App Store, and if you have a license for App Store, then you will be able to connect to the App Store and download further products. So as it says here, we're launching soon. This is just because I'm showing you this video before we've actually launched this version, and you can see different types of applications that you can download for your LBX. So we've got health monitors, we've got jetpacks, we can do software updates, add-ons, I'll come to those a bit later, some feature packs and some flight paths. You can also open IP services if you want to from this section. So before, I think the library was called configure, now it's called the library, and this is where we typically have a location of stuff that needs to be created and stored for later use. If you give an example, which probably everyone's familiar with, if they're familiar with the box of flight path, then we configure flight path rules here, but in order to action them on a particular service, then we go to the flight path tab and apply them. Now obviously we've got no services at the moment, so we can't do that. So if you think of a library as where you store all your content or created content, and then you can apply them later at the IP services stage. So what else do we have? As we said before, we've got add-ons, which is a type of app, and it says here we've got no add-ons to display at the moment. Please deploy your add-on from the library apps, so we'll do a bit of that later. We've also got new library of apps, so here where you can see the type of apps. What you have to do is log on to the App Store in order to be able to see what apps you've purchased. Once you've purchased them, you'll be able to see it in this bottom section, and then you can click download and download them from the App Store, and it'll go in the downloaded section where you can deploy them. And depends what apps they are as where it will then be deployed. If it's a flight path app, it'll be deployed into the library of flight paths. If it's an add-on, it'll be deployed into the library of add-ons, and the same with monitors and jetpacks. So also new on this page, we've got authentication. So pre-authentication, we could call it. It also includes single sign-on, and there's also a logging element to this too. So it's in two sections, or three sections really. So we can add an authentication server, and in this version we can just add LDAP, an LDAP authentication server, and then we create rules to present client-side forms, or use the basic 401 from the browser, and we can also add a default form in there if we want to. So again, we'll come back to more detail, just showing you navigational wise the changes. Also new in this version is the widget library. So this is where we can configure various widgets from the ones displayed. And because, as we said, we configure them here, then we add them to the dashboard. So if we look at the view dashboard, now we've got a custom dashboard. Any widgets that have been configured we can show here. And as you can see, we can see all the different ones. How that works is we can, let's say if we get rid of the system utilization by clicking the cross, we can get rid of the events, we can get rid of the server status and just have bytes in, bytes out on our dashboard if you wish to. But if you want to add those back in, then we can just choose, well, let's choose events again. Simply choose it and it'll add it back in. And we can also customize it. So we can pause that dashboard so we don't get any live events. We can minimize these, making it easier to customize. And then we can move them around. So we can move one above the other. If I could do that properly. So we can move them up. And then we can open it back out again. We can also resize them too. Click play and it will start again. I think that's the only difference for the view category. The system, we've kind of put everything in there that pertains to your ALBX as a system, and that includes clustering. So you cluster two ALBXs together, it goes, you configure that within the clustering section. We've amalgamated the network section. So instead of having separate things for bonding and hardware, we've set that up all in this bit. So you've got your basic setup. We've added the ability to add 2 DNS servers and also IPv version 6. Your adapter details are in there with your interfaces and your bonding and static routes, and also your advanced networking settings. So it's nice, clear, one page instead of dotted around the product in 3 different pages. We've also amalgamated the power, restart, reboot and power off sections into one page. Important to use the license. The top of the section is the license detail. The most important one, I guess, is the machine ID, and this is what you need to license your product. And then it will tell you in dark matter we've got layer 4 and layer 7. We can restrict based on those particular features. And then we've added some new features which are pre-authentication and some apps. One includes a firewall and a global server load balancing, so we can license those separately too. And also new to dark matter is a throughput license. So I guess that's it for the system page. Then we've got in advance, we've separated out the configuration and software, as you can see. So configuration is literally just to do with anything to do with uploading a config or a jetpack, or browsing for a config or a jetpack, or downloading a configuration. And the software side of it, we've split that out. So now you've got ALB software upgrade details in the top section. This connects to our cloud services manager to retrieve your details. And you can see I'm currently located near Liverpool. You can see the support type, you can see when it expires. So this connects through to our Salesforce database to get the various information. It also enables you to download software from the cloud, and that includes the OWASP core rule set for the WAF. And then as soon as we bring out new versions of software from this version onwards, you'll be able to see those in the cloud. You could download that into the ALB and then later apply it. So it will download it into this section, and then you can click, you can highlight and apply it. So it won't automatically download for you. You have to download it yourself, and you can do that at an appropriate time. And then this little section here is if you purchased something from the App Store, you can download that manually, or if you've done it from within the ALBX, it will go straight into your apps page. But if you do it manually, then you can upload it here. So if you have an app that's tied to your ALB and you have the .alb file, you can browse for it and upload an app here. Equally, you can upload software, but that will upload it to this directory. But if you want to upload and apply software, they use this button. So 2 different buttons. One's for apps and just uploading software, and then one's for uploading and applying software. So this is software only, this button here, but it'll reboot your ALB as you press it. And then we've added a new troubleshooting section. And in this one, so you can choose support files, so you can download all of the files needed for support. Ping, as before, we've added a trace section so we can look at caching and connections and data and flight path and server monitoring a bit more detailed. And then the usual capture section at the bottom. So that's it for navigation, the new to navigation. Why don't we start by, we'll add and see what else is new in the product, but we'll start by adding some services. So I'm going to close down this bit. A nice neat way actually to do this is if you click the home button. If you get any kind of problems with your browser or something's not displaying properly, then a nice neat solution is to click the home button as well, and that'll kind of reset everything. So you should get back to everything that's closed down. You're on IP services. So let's add a service. So first thing when we add a service really is to know what IP addresses you can put on your box. What virtual IP addresses. So I would look at the network section. So let's look at system and network and have a look at our interfaces. So I have an interface on 192.168.163 and it's in a Class C network. So I can put anything with these first three octets fixed and anything else on there. So I'm going to use 101 for that one. So I'm going to add 192.168.163.101, and then when I get to the subnet mask section, new for this one, I think I can type in /24, so slash notation, and click tab, and it'll fill it out for me. Put in my port, and then put in my service name. So this is just a web service. You notice it's chosen HTTP automatically, so I don't need to do anything. We could click the drop down and see what else is available. I'm going to click update, and then the focus then changes down to here. You can see the red saying this field is required. And now I'm going to go to a 10. Oh no, I'm not. I'm going to go to 192.168.45.211, and then I'm going to copy this bit of it because I'm going to add some more servers. So 45.211. I have a server that exists on that network. You notice it's different from the top section. As long as you can route to that IP address, then the status health check will pass, and the default status health check is a TCP connection. So it's just going to the IP address and the port and seeing whether that server exists in that context. So I'm going to add that one. I'm going to add another one, 212, and then add service, and then this one's 10. Oh, so that's the same one, and then this was 213. Oh, I missed the one off. So I'm going to go to that one for 213. You notice it said before it was grey. It means finding status of server, so it's doing the health checks there. So all three are working, and we can test that if we go to our VIP. So open that up, and we can see here we're load balancing to all three web servers. So the images are being retrieved from all three. So we can, there we go, we can see that. We're load balancing across all three web servers. So I'm going to make another change. I'm going to actually, no, what I'll do is I'll show you copy server. No, I'm going to make a change. So I'm going to make a change, and I'm going to change the load balancing policy to fastest. I'm going to take compression off, just for simplicity. And I'm going to change my monitoring interval for 10 seconds. So I've made a few changes there. I'm going to see those. And then just as an example, just to show you our new section here, we've got a copy service. So we've added in servers, we've made a few changes, we've changed it to fastest, and we've changed it to 10 seconds. So instead of having to type all that out again by adding another virtual service, we can click copy service. And this time we're going to create a secure web service. So I'll just type in secure, click update, and it's added in everything that we've done. So it's added in the servers, it's added in the load balancing policy, and it's changed the monitoring interval. So copy service literally copies everything that you have there. So one thing to be aware is if you have any flight path rules on here, I've just kind of made one up now to add it. If you copy a service and then decide you want to change that service to a layer 4, it won't let you do that because you've got a flight path rule on there, which is HTTP only. So it will tell you only HTTP server supports flight path rules. So you cannot change that to layer 4 in this section. You'd have to change it to HTTP, remove the flight path rule, and then change it to layer 4. So we could do this, for example. Take the rule off and then change it to layer 4. Okay, we don't need that service, so I'm just going to remove it. So what else is new? Well, looking at this page, we've got some weighting down at the bottom here. We've got a calculated weight, which depends on the load balancing policy and also what your manually configured weight is. And so we can configure the weight with fastest. What I'll do first is just show you, I'll send some traffic to this web service, and we'll see how these servers perform based on which is the fastest. So that's one of the things that's new. Okay, so I'm going to send some traffic. If we view anything we want to see really visually, we can view in the status section. So if I now send some traffic, so one thing we can do is we can view the hits that's going to the service. We can then see the connections that go into each one of these back-end servers with the data and the requests per second that's going across those connections. And you can see some disparity between the two. So you can see Web 3 really is getting a lot more requests per second. So we wonder why we're doing that. We have the fastest algorithm on there. We can see the calculated weight, and so we haven't manually changed the weights, but these two are fairly even, and then this one is getting pretty much all it can get. So why would we see that? We can't really see from this section, but if we do view history, in the view history section we can choose real servers, and we're going to this virtual service. We're going to choose these 3 backend servers. So you can just click, and then when they're highlighted in blue, click update, and we can see the requests per second. So we see exactly what we saw within the status page. So it's not really explaining anything to us at the moment. But if we look here in the data section, we've added a new response time bit. We can just change it to look at the response time of each server. And we can see that those servers are responding in a different manner. So it's only 20 microseconds or 0.2 microseconds. But this is why server number 3 is getting more requests. So if we put requests on there, I wonder whether we can overlay the 2, which we can, but then you don't really see the response time there, you see the requests. So you can see why it's getting so many more requests than the other 2. It's because the response time is so small. So that's a real neat way to do it. So what we can do, if we look at the current connections for each one, so we can see red has more current connections. What we can do is restrict that even further with weighted load balancing, so that these 2 which are responding more slowly, we can manually restrict them. So if we restrict them down to 10, and then we'll see what that does to our graph. So server number 1, which is in green, we can see that dropping down its current connections, and then we can see the fastest server dealing with those extra connections that came through. So we can manually restrict the server if we need to work out what's going wrong. So let's see what effect it has when we change the load balancing policy to least connections. So if we move to least connections, and click update and look back at our history, we can see based on that algorithm that red and blue now get the same amount of connections, despite the fact that red is a far faster responding server. So it's important to choose the right load balancing policy. And then let's see what happens if we change the manual weighting back to 100 for server number 1. So that also changes the calculated weighting back to 100. If we look at the history, now you can see all three servers, despite all three servers have a different having a different response time, we can see all three now getting an equal amount of connections based on the load balancing policy, least connections. So in this instance, least connections is not really the favored method. When we change that back to fastest server and then see the effect on our history graph. So we can see immediately we get a lot more connections going through to our fastest server, which is server number 3. So it's a better load balancing method for these particular set of servers. And we check the response time again. So we should expect server number 2 to be slower than server number 1 and server number 3 to be faster than both of them. So let's try that. So we can see the fastest server is 3, second fastest is 2, and slowest overall is server number 1. So that makes sense. Okay, so what else is new? Before we created, or we copied the port 80 and we created a secure web service. One of the things that's new for this version, actually this little bar is new, so we can change the size of the screen there. If we've got lots more services, then we can open it out. Or server name indication, sorry. So let's go back to our secure web service. How do we make it secure? Well, what we didn't do before was we didn't add a certificates there, so it's got no SSL on the virtual service side. Virtual service side is this, so the virtual service, as opposed to the real server, which is down to the server. So what we need to do is first create our certificates, because we've only got, we have some on there, but I'm going to create some new ones. So I go to library. This is where we create things to then be able to use them in the IP services section. So let's create one called SNI Cert 1, and you can fill it out normally. I'm just going to cheat and cut and paste. Great Britain, SNICert1.com. We want to make it a 2048, and it's a local certificate, so we'll put in a 555. This one's going to be SNI Cert 2. So we'll cut and paste again. And just change that one to SNI Cert 2. And then we could put a 3 in as well. Let's do that. So it's SNI Cert 3. So what we'll find is we just look down here, we'll just check whether they're, yeah. So we've got SNI Cert 1, 2 and 3, all self-signed. We've actually got an imported real certificate, and we can import that from this section here. So if we go back to IP services now, we should be able to assign all 3 of those certificates to our 443 server. So we highlight that, go to our basic tab, and let's highlight 1, 2, 3. You can see they're highlighted, and they've also shown up comma delimited here. Comma delimited. So if we click update, that enables SNI by default, just by enabling more than one certificate. So that's on the client side certificate. We're doing SSL offloading in this case, so we've got no SSL on the servers, and you can see they're going to port 443. So we should be able to, if we look at our host entry, so if we look at the host entry, you can see the IP address comes first, then we've got SNI Cert 1, 2 and 3. The IP address is the VIP address up at the top. So we can check that. Always useful to check. Open up a command prompt, and in that command prompt, if we ping SNICert1.com, we get to that VIP address. If we go to Cert 2, So the whole point of server name identification is the fact that we can present a different certificate on the same IP address, therefore preserving our number of IP addresses. We can present whatever certificate that the client has requested, and this is due to an extension within TLS that sends the host name in plain text in order for us to read it, and then we can present the correct certificate. Without SNI, without this SNI extension, if you go to SNI Cert 2 and we're presenting SNI Cert 1, then your browser will bring up an error. It will always bring up an error, incidentally, with local certificates. And that's because it's a local certificate, it's not signed by a trusted root authority. So let's do away with that one. And now, instead of going to HTTP, well, let's go to HTTPS SNI cert1.com. So we should go through. It tells us it's an insecure connection. That's just because it's a low. It's because it's a local certificate. SNI cert1 uses invalid certificates. Add exception, confirm exception, and we get through to our website. And if we look in here just to confirm more information, brings up the certificate, and we can see that the website is SNI cert1. It's using the certificate, so we can see that that common name is SNI1, SNIcert1.com. We do the same thing if we did SNI cert2. So we'll get the same deal, add exception, confirm security exception, check the certificate, more information, view certificate, we get SNI Cert 2, and then just for good measure, we can try SNI Cert 3. Let's try that one. Okay, and there we go. View certificate, SNI Cert 3. So that's SNI on the client side. And just to prove that again, we could take one of those certificates off. So if we deselect it, so we deselect 3, deselect 2, and then click update. So we've only got SNI Cert 1 on there. But we should see that this is fine. But if we try and go to Control Shift Reload on these, advanced, we will only be presented with SNI Cert 1 now. So if we look at this, the website is that, the certificate is SNI Cert 1. That's because we only have SNI Cert 1 selected. One thing to note as well, so if we put that back, if we go to the website and we don't present these domains, so let's say we go to the IP address, or we could add another entry. So let's add another entry to our host file. So we copy that one, paste it, and we change that to Cert 4. Oops. Click Save, make sure you're on as administrator. And then we open up SNI Cert 4. What we're going to expect here is that it will fail, because the default behavior is, there we go, secure connection failed. And the reason why that is because the default behavior, the SNI default certificate, is to set to none. So we do not present a certificate. So it's a way of securing your website that you're definitely only going to allow traffic through if they're coming to the right domain name. If, however, you want to present any certificate, so we could choose any that are applied to the box, let's say, for argument's sake, SNI Cert 2, we can click that one. Even if we go to SNIcert4.com, now it's going to present us with the default one. If it doesn't match 1, 2, or 3, then it will go to 4 instead. So we can have a look at that one. SNI 2, and that's because we've selected the default one. So if it doesn't match, it will go to the default. Oops. And we can check that again if we go to Web 1, click refresh, Control Shift. There we go, we want to go to there, don't we? So we've reloaded on there. This will be presenting 1 as a certificate. Yep. And there we go. So that's SNI on that side. Also note, and of new, put on a per service basis, that we can set the client SSL renegotiation either on or off, and we can select the client SSL resumption on or off. Those are probably out of scope for this tutorial. If you want to know more details about that, then have a look at the user guide and the SSL Certificates section, or sorry, the IP services section under Advanced tab, and there'll be a little explanation about SSL renegotiation, SSL resumption. So now I guess we want to add a SNI on the server side. So for that we need a re-encrypted service. So we can use our new copy function again. And this is going to copy port 80 on here, and it's going to copy only the client side certificates. So what we really want to do is, if we need to make some changes after we've copied it. So if we copy that and we call that 4443 secure web service, and then we just call that re-encrypt, click update. We have to change the port, so the server's listening on, let's say we're going to do 4443 as well. (4443) just to keep it consistent. 4443, and as you can see, we're failing on that, meaning we don't have a server at the moment. Or it could be that we don't have SSL on the back end side. So if we put on this side, we want to use SNI. So we'll choose SNI here, click update, and we're still failing. So what I'm going to do is have a look at those servers. So we're going to do a more robust health check to these servers. So I'm going to change that to a layer 7 health check. Normally we would just choose something like a 200 OK. Notice also we've got a TCP connection and a 200 OK, so we can do multiple monitors now. We could add ping in there. I also recommend that you go from left to right the further down the stack. So I would start at the bottom of the stack. So ping is layer 3, TCP connection is layer 4, and your 200 OK is layer 7. So we'll just take that one off and just leave those two for now, and then see what we get. Let's just see what's happening there. And you can see it's finding status. So if it's finding status for this long, generally it's going to fail, and it will fail and go to red. And what we can do then is look at the dashboard, and we can look at our events log, and we can see here it's unreachable, and it says the connect is okay, so the TCP connect is okay, but the layer 7 is failing. So I wonder why that's happening. So let's just simplify it again. Take the TCP connect off and click OK. Go back to our dashboard, and we can just see the 200 OK is failing. So we've just shown you multiple. It gave you an idea. So we know the server's running on that port because it says the TCP connect is okay, so it must be a layer 7 thing. And the reason being is because the server is expecting SNI, and our health check, this 200 OK is not SNI, it's not sending the domain name. So if we look at our library of real server monitors, we can see, actually there's one there, we'll just remove that so we can add it in again. So we can see the 200 OK doesn't really send, it's just looking for the page location, but doesn't really send a domain name, and therefore that's going to fail. So let's add a monitor, and we'll just call that SNI Cert1. And so we're going to choose the domain name Cert1 in this one, and we'll leave the description till later. This time we choose HTTP response, and we do the full path, so HTTPS, and it is snicert1.com. We're going to go to the index.html, and we're looking for a 200 OK. 200 OK. So another thing to notice here, you can see applied to VS, so this one's not applied to anything, we just created it, but our 200 OK is applied to this virtual service. It's really useful because when you highlight this, you also can't remove it, you can't delete it because it's applied to a service. So that's new in version 4.2.0, just trying to look after some of the monitors we created that we know are useful, and if you remove them by accident, you can't remove them to active services. So let's change that active service. We're still on red here. What we're expecting to see is, because what we've configured is SNI Cert 1 going to this particular server. So I'm expecting that one to go green once we change this monitor. So we'll get rid of that one, and then we'll choose SNI Cert 1, click out and click update. And then we go straight away, we've got green. The reason being is because this server is set to accept the domain name SNI Cert 1, and these ones are Cert 2 and Cert 3, just for demonstration purposes. So we've passed already. We've got SNI here we're passing through, that we will pass through to the server. So if we choose SNI Cert 1, if we choose SNI Cert 2 or Cert 3, it will be passed through to the server. So let's test that now. So if we go to, let's get rid of that one. So what we haven't done, we haven't put in our 4443. So if we do that, we can see we're only going to web server 1. Also again, sorry, my mistake, I need to put in 4443. Okay, so this time we get bad request invalid hostname, and this is because we're being forwarded to web server 1, but using SNI Cert 2 domain name. Okay, so what else is new for version 4.2? One of the big things we've got is authentication. And authentication is where your backend server doesn't require any authentication at all, and you go through to your website as you do with this. So if we wanted to go through to our service, so we could put just HTTP SNI cert1.com, and this will just go through, because we've resolved it to the same IP address, it's just going through to this port 80 service here. Let's just close down a few of those things, and we're load balancing across those 3 web servers, but anyone can get there. So we want to have the ability to authenticate some people before they can get to our service, and that might be a web service, it might be SharePoint, it might be some other in-house application that you have. And so what we're going to do is we've got app 1, app 2 and app 3. So let's say we had application 1 or app1.jmwork.com all going through to our web service, and we had app 2, and we also had app 3. And because we've got no restrictions on there, we can get to all 3 apps, and that's not really ideal. Maybe we've got an LDAP server and we want to authenticate our users of that LDAP server against our application to make sure that they can use it. So how would we do that? First of all, we have to go to the library of authentication. So we'll close down a few of these, and in there we're going to add a server to connect through to. So we'll give it a name. It's an LDAP S server, and we're going to use a protocol called LDAP S to connect through to it. The domain for us is jetNEXUS 0, and the server address is 192.168.3.200, and the port that we is port 636. And then we've got something called a login format. So you can see the red box there. It's telling me that the field is required, and we're going to say username only, meaning we just have to put in our username. We don't have to put the domain in. So we'll click update, and we can use this LDAP S server. Maybe we change that to server so it's easier to identify. And then we go down to Authentication Rules, and we can add a rule to use this server, and I'm just going to call it LDAP S rule. We're not going to put a root domain in, we'll come back to that for single sign-on, but the authentication server we're choosing from a drop down that we've created up above. So that's the LDAP server there. And this is what we present to the client. Do we present the basic browser 401 page, or do we present a form? What form is that? It's the default one. You can upload a form here, and the user guide will tell you how to do that. And then the server side, as we've proved, has no authentication, but if it had basic or NTLM, we could have chosen one of those two. So we'll just choose none. We can give it a message. So hi, hi, what's new in 4.2.0, and then for demonstration purposes we can set a timer. So I'm going to set that to 60 seconds. This means we have to authenticate every 60 seconds. Usually you can set that to hours, but we're setting it on a quite a short term for now. So click update. And now, so we've set a server, we've set a rule. The final piece of the jigsaw is to set a flight path rule so we can tie that to our service that uses this rule, and then that links everything together. So if we go to flight path, we see we've got nothing in there. We'll just call this authenticate app servers. And if you leave the condition blank, that means it will always be active. But an interesting condition might be, could be geolocation. So you might want to geolocate and only have people from outside of the UK authenticate. You might want to be more specific and have the origin IP or the source IP. And then you only have to authenticate people outside of your local subnet. Anything inside will be allowed through automatically. Anything on your DMZ subnets, or comes through from the DMZ, or comes through from anywhere external to your local IP addresses, you could choose this, but we're going to leave it blank for now because we always want the condition to match. And then the action, we choose authenticate as our action here, or authentication, and choose the LDAP rule that we created. So this is where that ties that one in. Now this is just a library of rules where you can choose to apply it. Now we have to apply that to our service. We're going to choose to apply it to the port 80 service. So we go to flight path, there's our rule, apply it, and then we can go to app1jnwork.com, click Control-Shift-R, and we get a form, which is the default jetNEXUS form. Here's our message that we added in, and now I have to use my domain username and password. So gchristie, and then my domain password, if I can remember it properly. Click enter. Let's have it remember. And I'm going to app2.jnwork.com. Click Control-Shift-R to reload, and I have to log in again because I'm going to a different domain. If I just click refresh here to reload, I'm fine. So I've got 60 seconds before that'll time out. But this one, I have to sign in again. So that's a real pain, right? I have to sign in twice because it's a different domain, a different application. So I'll just do that. Ooh. Should pick a short password. And then the same with this one. So all three of these I've had to log in separately. And then by the time we get back to this one, oh, this one's okay still for now. Control-Shift-Reload, I have to sign in. This one, Control-Shift-Reload, no. Yeah. So I had to sign into all three separately. Which, you know, that may be exactly what you want. But if you would require single sign-on, so we can sign into all three different applications with just signing into one of them, or we can be allowed through, then we can choose something called single sign-on if we complete the root domain as jnwork.com. So why don't we do that? What we'll do is we'll create another rule. So we'll add a rule. This time it's LDAP S, and it is SSO Rule. So we're going to use the same server. We're going to use the same form. So we're going to set up everything the same. The only difference is we're going to say the root domain is jnwork. jmwork.com. So anything with jmwork.com will be allowed through. So app1, app2, app3, www will be allowed through. And we should also make that on 60 seconds. And we'll create another flight path rule. So we'll add another one. So this is authenticate, and we'll call this one apps servers brackets SSO. So we can see that only this one's applied at the moment. Same condition, and this time we're going to choose authenticate, and we're going to authenticate with the SSO rule, and then we're going to tie that one to our service. So we can see there, we drag that one over, and we'll drag that one back. So now we've got the single sign-on authentication rule. So if we do Control-Shift-Reload, we see there's no message. So one thing we can do is just go and change that one. So this is just say SSO rule. Control-Shift-Reload. We can see it says SSO rule, and Control-Shift-Reload on this one, SSO rule. Control-Shift-Reload on this one, SSO rule. So let's just log in with app 3 this time. Luckily we saved our password. Yeah, and refresh, and it allows us through now, so we don't have to sign on. So we've only signed into one application. Control-Shift-Refresh. So that's single sign-on. Very easy to do. We simply add the root domain in there. What else do we have with authentication? So what we can see in the advanced section, we've got a security log and it's on. And that security log will log our username and password in the W3C log, so we have to turn that one on. So let's make sure we've got, let's just do full and click update. Okay, so we should be able to see if we download that one. Yeah, open with Notepad. If we bring that one across, and now if we do a find, we should be able to see G Christie. And there we can see it. So we can actually see myself logging on. So we can see us logging on and getting the post there. So we see find next. So we can see us requesting the resource. Okay, let's close that one down now. Back to our IP services. So that's a brief overview of authentication. Let's scroll back up. So a big new one for us is the App Store. So if we go to App Store, you have to have a license to access the App Store. So you can purchase a license direct from one of your account managers at jetNEXUS. It says launching soon, but some of the things that we've got here, let's say a flight path rule, because we don't have many of those. We can go into flight path and choose a rule. This one's free, so let's choose that one. Let's get a bit more information. If we click the icon, and it masks sensitive information and blocks it with an X, leaving the last 4 digits. So we can add that one to the cart. So add that to the cart. And because we're doing this from within the ALB, what it will do is it will tie the app with your ALBX and the machine ID, so you don't have to download it manually. We're just going to proceed to checkout. And it asks you to log in, so I'm just going to log in. If you don't have a login already, then you can follow all of those details and create yourself a profile on the App Store. I've got one already, so I'm just going to do that. And I'm just going to place my order for £0. And then it should give you some instructions to either look in the library of apps in your downloaded section, or so if we read that, please view your purchased apps in the library apps page of your LBX. Alternatively, you can download it now. So if you wanted a local copy for this particular box, you could fill in the machine ID. So let's have a look at that. Machine ID is in the license page in the system settings. So it's here, we can choose that. If we go back to the App Store, we can choose this one, click download, and then what we'll get is a flightpath.alb file, which is a smart file with the icons, with the actual file itself, the flight path file. It will give you some information so that you can view it on the apps page, and it's tied to your LB based on this machine ID. So we can save that file and use that later. How we would upload that is if we go to the upload section of the software page, upload software to LB, browse for that file, and we click upload app because it's an application. And then that will put that into the library of apps. So if we look in the library of apps now, we should be able to see our purchased apps. We haven't downloaded it yet. We've already signed in, so it's associated with me. And we should be able to see that flight path rule. I'm just going to click home. Well, oh, there we go. Mass sensitive card information. So we'll click download app, and this downloads it to this particular box. We haven't had to put in the machine ID at the moment because we're doing it from within the ALB. That was only to get the external file, and now it's in our downloaded app section. So if we look at the flight path section, we'll see it's blank. It doesn't have that yet. We haven't deployed it. We go back to the apps page and click deploy. Yes, I want to deploy it. It's going to deploy it into the library of flight paths. If we look in our flight path section, we can see we've got blank out credit cards. So you've gone from the App Store, viewing what was available, purchasing it. Once you purchase it, it will appear in your purchased app section here. You can download that to your ALB at your discretion, then deploy it, and it appears in your flight path library of flight paths, and it's not in use at the moment. We have to tie it to a virtual service. What we do have is the ability to do the same thing with what's called a web application firewall. So let's have a look at that one. I think I've already purchased it, so I look at what's in my purchased. There we go, jetNEXUS application firewall. I'm going to download the app. This is a larger file, so it's going to take a lot longer than the flight path one. It's just going to prepare the file first. And you should get a progress bar, so downloading. So it depends on the speed of your internet connection. Mine's pretty slow there, so I'm just going to pause this video while it downloads. So once your firewall is downloaded, it will appear in the downloaded app section, and you can click deploy, and this will deploy it into the add-on section because that's what it is. You've got a firewall add-on. It says there are no add-ons to display at the moment. Please deploy your add-on from the library of apps page. So the library of apps, let's click deploy. It should ask you if you want to deploy, and then the app is deploying. Please wait. So that should take a few minutes depending on the speed of your ALBX. I'm just using one on my local laptop, so it takes a bit longer than if you're using a hardware appliance or a high-speed VM. Okay, that's finished deploying, so we go to add-ons now. We can see we've got this firewall, so we'll give it a name. We're going to call it WAF1. We're going to give it an IP address, so I'm going to give it an external IP address which is on the subnet that the ALB is on, so we give it 192.168.163.99. And you can configure external ports, so if you configure it with port 80, only port 80 will be allowed. If you leave it blank, then any ports that you access will be forwarded onto the firewall. So I'm going to leave that blank, click update, and then I'm going to click play. And if you notice when I click play, it fills out the internal IP address. What it's running is a Docker container running on this internal IP address, and we've just created an external one so we can access it. And Then we can click the add-on GUI. So because it's an external application, it has its own GUI. We can log on to it. It's just an add-on application. And there we go, we've got our firewall. What we need to do now is we need that firewall to do something. So what we can have a look at, let's just close a few things down. If we look at a diagram of how this sits, so if we go to https appstore.jetnexus.com, we should see something in there that called the user guides. Actually, what we can do is just click reference. So if we click help reference, we should go through to the user guides. If we click 4.2.0 user guide, and then we're interested in the add-ons, so if we go to add-ons, this might change this local one, but we can see an example architecture, and this is all we're really after. So what we've got at the moment is the client accessing the external IP address. We need to configure the firewall to go to the VIP address of the ALB, and then behind that VIP we've got the web cluster. So let's have a look what our VIP is. Our VIP is this IP address here. So if we take that one, if we go to the management section of the firewall, we change that from jetNEXUS.com to this, click save. So now we are going, let's get rid of that. Now we're going client to .99. The firewall then sends anything that it passes to .101, and then we send it on to 45.211.212.213. So we can have a look if that actually works. So if we just go to this and see what happens, we can see the page was blocked by jetNEXUS application firewall. So that's kind of a good start. It doesn't allow us to get all the way through, but let's just look at the firewall now and see what that's doing. So we can either look at the events, and we can see host headers and numerical values, so that's giving us a clue. So if we look at the firewall section, we can see we're on detection and blocking, which is why we're blocked, and we've got a blocking rule that's come through. That means that we're on 192.168. We're on IP address as opposed to a domain name. So let's put it into the whitelisted rules to allow that through. Click update, and then click refresh. And now we get through to our single sign-on rule. We can then single sign-on, allow ourselves to log in. Because it's single sign-on doesn't contain jnwork.com, it won't allow us through, so we're going to have to take that flight path rule off. It's easy enough. We can just drag and drop that one. And if we refresh again, now we get through to our service, but we're going through the firewall now. So our VIP address is here. Our firewall address is .99, and we're going through to .99. Now if we did something naughty like maybe we did an SQL injection attack, where the signature for that is this, then we say the page is blocked again. We can look on our firewall, click refresh on here, and we can see an SQL injection attack. We click update. I'm sure there's going to be a few more, so if we try again, it's still blocking us. We click refresh. We've got another one. Update, confirm, and this time we're allowed through, which is very nice. So the rule detection is automatic. You just then have to go inside here. Now what we can do, if you've got lots of rules and you just want to test this one, is you can do detection only. So if we click update, we'd have to find those 3 rules again. It's going to block us, and we can either whitelist them. But you can do detection only. So if we click detection only, then it will allow us through and still find those rules. Okay, so that's a brief overview of the App Store and Web Application Firewalling. What else is new? So let's do the last one now. So we'll go to troubleshooting. What's really useful, if you do get any problems, you can troubleshoot the connections that come through. You can troubleshoot the flight path. So if you don't know what's happening, you can detect that. So why don't we choose flight path and click start. We'll add a flight path rule, so single sign-on, and then we'll click refresh on here. So as we click refresh, if we look at the troubleshooting section, we should be able to see that rule fire. And we click login. We should be able to click app1.jmwork.com, click login, and go through. And there we can see the authentication. So request rule authenticate. So it's a nice way of authenticating, of seeing the flight path rule in action there. We can stop that. We could have a look at the server monitoring. So server monitoring unreachable. Do we have any unreachable ones? Why don't we'll do that one. So we'll click server monitoring unreachable, click start. So we can see the trace started. I'm going to fail a server now. So if we change the port to port 86, click update, and that one should fail. So we can see a trace of the monitoring unreachable and stopped. Connection refused, basically, so it gives us a bit more information. So if we click stop there, so we can see connection refused. No connect after 1 second. Okay, so thanks for watching this video on what's new in version 4.2. Please see the links below to get your free trial or watch any more videos in the tutorial series.